If you say, I don't know if you do, there is no potential in God, how do you call the worlds he could have created but didn't, and the option of not to create them he didn't choose? Something we have to make clear is that when we're talking about potentiality, this language of potentiality, for one, all throughout the fathers, you will read that God has no potentiality. Like, in terms of the way they understood this term potentiality, the fathers say God has no potentiality. The structure of some of the most classic patristic works would not make sense if God had potential, because Gregory Palamas's 150 chapters, St. John of Damascus's Fount of Knowledge, both of these texts, foundational to the Orthodox faith, rely upon classical arguments for God that presuppose that God is the first cause who is beyond potential. Now, this doesn't mean that we believe in Thomism, because as I was saying in my previous response, I don't collapse the energies into the essence, nor do I even collapse the energies into themselves. In a certain way, I would argue that they do, in the sense that the one logi are many the many logi are one logos. That is the sense in which I believe there is genuine multiplicity and unity when it comes to the divine energies. Now, I'm sort of dancing around the question, but the point is that classically, we did not affirm that God has potential. Now, this is something that Jay sent me, and we've talked about this, and the conflict is over, but it's interesting nonetheless. He sent me this Tikhon Pino, who is, in my mind, the foremost Palamite scholar today, along with people like David Bradshaw. And he says that Palamas does use the term dynamis, which in Aristotelian language, it does translate to potential. He does use this term dynamis to refer to God, and to refer to the divine energies in particular. But what he points out, this is what Pino points out, which is very crucial. For Palamas, he uses dynamis in a very strange way. Palamas uses the term dynamis in an essentially synonymous way with actuality or energeia. So to talk about potential or dynamis for Palamas is more so to talk about power. It is power which God has eternally actualized as what he calls a first actuality within the Trinitarian communion. Now, I would link this with the Logi. I think that all of these possible worlds that God has created, these or that he hasn't created, these exist in the mind of God as an intrinsic power of God, his creative power. Now, when we're talking about creation as such, the actual act of creating, I believe Pino, and Jay agrees with me on this, Pino calls this the second actuality. It is a contingent realization of the first actuality. So let's talk about creation, right? The creative power of God. I have argued that God has no potential, even in terms of his creative power, because the creative power of God is fully actualized as a first actuality. And by first actuality, I understand it as what is necessary for God to be God. He has to have these actualities, right? And that includes every possible world he could have created. This is something the Father contemplates his power in the Logos, Christ, through the Spirit, which is why the many logi all... I believe there are logi for all possible worlds. I could be corrected on this. This makes the most sense to me. And this whole language of possible worlds, I don't think it's like a big theme in philosophy prior to modernity. So in any case, what do I call these worlds he hasn't created? Well, I don't believe that God depends upon creation to be God. So I think that all of these second actualities, what could have been created, they neither contribute nor diminish God at all. So I don't even think we can talk about these possible worlds as in themselves contributing anything to God, aside from God having the power to actualize them. Whether or not they're actualized doesn't diminish God in any way, nor does it fully actualize him in any way. We don't believe that at the beginning of creation, God had yet to fully manifest himself as fully actual as God. Yes, in terms of his contingent realizations, his creation of the world, his glorification of the world, this hasn't happened yet, but this is not something on the side of God. It has to do with God not yet joining himself with the world, but God in himself. He is fully complete. He is fully actualized as who he is. And because we are entirely contingent, we add nothing, nor do we diminish anything from God. Our state, our very existence contributes nothing to the essence of God, because the essence of God is fully realized within the Trinitarian communion. There is no need of creation. So I like to think of what we call second actualities as contingent manifestations, free manifestations of divine energies or divine actualities, which are fully realized in God. So for example, the creative power of God, fully realized. God has this power from all eternity, and he knows this power in the Logos, in the Logi. So all the possible worlds of God are, in a sense, actualized, not as actual creations, but as powers that God contemplates within his mind. This is what Palamas means by the term dynamis, which translates to potentiality or power. Power is a form of actuality. It is an actuality, according to Palamas. A second actuality is a contingent or free realization of an energy, of an actuality, of a first actuality. So, for example, a concrete example, which I got from David Bradshaw, a husband who loves his wife with the same love every single day. So we could also say the Father and the Son love each other with the same love for eternity. It's the same divine love. And God knows his same creative power in the Son from all eternity. But one day, a husband may choose to buy his wife flowers. Another day, he may choose to buy her chocolates. These are both expressions of the same energy of love, which in God is fully actualized. I don't think it's fully actualized for anyone in this life. But you can see how even in the analogy here, the husband freely chose to buy his wife chocolates one day and flowers another. This is a second actuality. This is a free realization of a first actuality, which is love itself, which is the love that they have. This is how we need to understand it in God, where each energy, as Palamas says, fully contains the Godhead and fully expresses the Godhead. So each energy, there is an abundance of energies. I do believe in a plurality of divine energies, but they're all united in the fact that they are all one thing, quote unquote, which is the Trinitarian communion. So I think when God creates, though, so God has perfectly expressed his love and his creative power eternally within the Trinity. But when God creates, this is a free choice to use these intrinsic powers he already has to create something entirely contingent, which contributes nothing to his actuality. This is not a movement from potential to actual on his side. It's a movement of potential from actual on our side. Like the nothingness is potentially could be something, right? Because God contains the power to make it something. But when God creates, he in himself, because he is the Trinity, he does not move from potential to actual. Nothing about the Trinity changes when he creates. This is essential to Orthodox theology. This is very basic classical theism. Anything else is heresy, I'm sorry to say. So Lemon, I hope that answers your question. I just don't like this language of potentiality in God. I think it's so problematic, especially I do place some value in genuine ecumenism and ecumenical dialogue. And if you're talking with Western theologians, like, this is the reason why there is this common misunderstanding that Palamas is a pantheist, or Orthodox spirituality is like Hinduism. This is all related to a misunderstanding of what the divine energies are, how this relates to actus purus and traditional Thomistic understandings of God. I do think there is a distinction there. I am not a Thomist, as I have been called, but I don't think that the type of Palamism is really a genuine interpretation of what Palamas actually meant, in terms of a lot of what you see online about potentiality being in God and how there must be potential in God because God created. No. That's not what it's saying. This is a free, contingent realization of an actuality that is already perfectly expressed in God. And the reason why we can't say it's a movement from potential to actual in the Godhead is because nothing about God changes when he creates. This is a hill I will die on. This is just Orthodox theology. Yes, active versus passive potency, as Pano says. I think that's a good way to put it, because I think a good name for active potency is power. It even sort of implies like the sense of activeness. And when Palamas uses the term dynamis, he's talking about power, and power is itself an actuality, according to Pino. So yeah.